WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We are positively into football season. Lucas out at Owings Mills, monitoring all things Ravens as they get ready for a couple of big games here in just a couple of days apart on Sunday, first against the Cleveland Browns, and then against Tom Brady and the GOAT. I'm going to invite one of my GOATs of all time back onto the program. This guy, he's a Baltimore guy, but he's got this Philadelphia thing. Our friendship goes back to my childhood, literally, when he was foolish enough, along with, Lou Corletto and Lou Strudler and a bunch of others, Dick Patrick, to allow me into the Capitol Center to cover the at that time, the 1984, 85, 86 Washington Capitals. He's also a friend of Ed Frankovic, but he went to the dark side. He moved to Philadelphia a long time ago. He comes on the program only when the Philadelphia teams do well, which is twice a decade. I welcome him back onto the program. He is always out doing lawyerly things because he graduated from the toy department, sports department. All he really wanted to do was what I did, which was be Oscar Madison, I think, in the beginning, or John Stedman or Ken Rosenthal. Micah Buchdahl joins us now from the West Coast, but not San Diego, about to go to the Midwest. Dude, you're not even taking your kid to the NLCS, your commitment to your craft. It's unbelievable, brother.
Hey, I'll tell you what. I made sure that my son had tickets and had someone taking them. So he's taken care of. And actually, I'm going to St. Louis, where my daughter's a freshman at Wash U. And I made sure that she had tickets to go see the Phillies Cardinals wildcard round. So she was there. So ideally, I'll have my daughter at the clincher for the first round. I had my son at the clincher for the second round, and we'll see about round 3.
But in '83, you were an Orioles fan, right?
Yes. And I was in Philly, I was in college.
I was there too. Yeah. My dad was, we went to game 4 and 5. I was telling stories with Tyler Kepner last week. He just wrote a book and he was a childhood Phillies fan. And I pulled out my '83 pictures. I mean, that's geeky to me, but you were definitely Orioles. No doubt about it.
I was total Orioles. I still had my Sunday plan in Memorial Stadium. I went to both the ALCS and the NLCS games in Philly and all the games in Baltimore. And so that was my fantasy, like as a kid going to college in Philly, growing up in Baltimore, like that was the fantasy World Series, like Phillies Orioles, with the Orioles winning. So
you saw the Sarge get off in Philly, did you?
Yeah. And that was a great moment, a great memory. I took care of, that was back in the day when you went and spent the entire night outside the vet to get tickets for the World Series. So you camped out at, 2 a.m. until the ticket office opened and then you got seats. So that was back in the day when, people like us could actually go camp out and get tickets, as opposed to today where it's a real struggle.
Dude, you almost have a Philly accent. It's really weird. Have you been told this?
No, but
you do. I'll promise you that. I heard Howard Eskin in your voice there a moment ago. I swear to God I did. So you've been in Philly for a long time, practicing law. Your real track. I mean, at one point you were the general manager of an MISL team too. I should point that out. But you were involved in indoor soccer and hockey. Like you wanted, like sort of Chad Steele's job or Kevin Burns' job, or like you wanted to maybe even be a sports writer at one point, right?
Oh yeah, I started in journalism, and so I started in sports journalism, and then when I went to Philly for college back in way back in '81. One of the things, there were 2 things that attracted me to Philadelphia. One was obviously all those sports teams, and I wanted a big sports city. But also it had a ton of newspapers. Like back then, they had the Inquirer, the Daily News, the Journal, the Bulletin. And some of those had AM and PM. And so by the time I graduated, I think we were down to 2.
Yeah, the Bulletin. They were. It was just the Daily Journal and the Inquirer by '84, '85 when I got it. And if you remember, the National was then too. We did our Baltimore Sun sports writer reunion down at the Guinness Factory a couple weeks ago, and people bringing sports first from '84, and then the National happened, and then it kind of imploded, literally.
Yeah, and you had USA Today too. So the combination of the National, then you had USA Today, and then there really, excuse me, there weren't any. There were so few. I couldn't even get a newspaper internship. But I did get a PR internship with the Flyers for that '84, '85 season. And,
you
that
were
kind
on the dark side? I didn't realize that you came in through the Flyers. Wow.
Oh, yeah. I was orange and black. I went from one orange and black to another orange and
Dude, I
black.
mean, I hated every one of the prop. Kerr, Shell Samuelson, Hextall. Oh my God! I mean, but I met Eddie Frankovic the week that the goaltender was killed in the car crash in Cherry
Yeah,
Hill.
no, and that was the season I was. Pelle Lindbergh was my favorite Flyer. As a matter of fact, in my closet, closet at home, there's a Pelle Lindbergh jersey. Because at the end of my internship, as one of my going away gifts was they gave me a Pelle Lindbergh jersey because he was my favorite player. So, and then
He
I
was
was
still alive at that time, right?
oh yeah, he played. That was
No. He passed when you were with the Capitals, right?
yes, yeah, because I actually drove up from Landover to back to Philly to help out that night, that game after he had passed away.
And you got a hell of a history with all this, right? I mean, so it really comes at you sort of honest that you went to Philadelphia for college, and I think of you as like Baltimore guy and a Capitals and I knew you were an Orioles guy, but being a Philadelphia fan, you've given this to your child, and I've watched this. I've had you on at Super Bowl in Minnesota where you brought your boy out. Then now I guess he's 5-6 years older now, right? He's having a pretty good run that may have been Schmitty and Tug McGraw and Dr. J. And it's been fun to be in Philadelphia lately, right?
oh yeah, and he has, we have the irony is that I came from hockey. That's the only sport that we don't have a ticket plan. So we have Temple football, Temple basketball, Sixers plan, Eagles season tickets, and a Phillies plan, but we don't have anything hockey. For whatever reason, that's the only sport that he didn't fall in love with. But it is.
How old is he? How old's your boy?
What's that?
How old is your boy now?
He's 14 now.
14 now. Okay.
So I don't know if you remember Mark Piazza from the Flyers and the Rangers. He was one of my mentors and still one of my closest friends from, for 40 years. And so he's the one who had set up the Super Bowl tickets for us, 4 or 5 years ago. And so I was having lunch with him last week, and I said, I might need tickets again. This might be a Super Bowl year. And I said, if you walked up to my son, if you tapped that kid on the shoulder and you said, excuse me, what's the greatest moment of your life? Like within 3 seconds, he will say the Super Bowl. And so that's a memory that not only will it last forever, but I mean, it is still as vivid for him today as it was that day in Minneapolis. But
I visited with you that day. I think we took a picture that day.
Yeah, we did.
At the Super Bowl that day. I think we did.
Yep, we saw you and your wife. We kind of hung out a bit in the stands. This year was really exciting because, I always tell people like my son's he's a better version of me. He's actually a much smarter sports. I don't even like to use the word fan because he sees things on the field and on the court that I've never seen in my life. He's able to break down plays. I mean, he sees everything that goes on there. And
there's an internet that supports that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that he can go home and learn more and, analytics and launch angle and like all of the science of sports that we had baseball cards and maybe some Sports Center by the time we got to be 14 or 15, right? Like it's a different life being, if you want to immerse in that way, right?
Well, I told somebody the other night when I was watching the game one of the Phillies Padres was they put up the umpires. And I said, my son would tell you specifics about every single umpire they just put up there. He will tell you what their strike zone is, what their tendencies are. Like he knows, I mean, he literally knows everything. He knows batters that come up on, the Kansas City Royals. He'll tell you whether they swing at first pitches. I mean, it's all like here from just watching. So I'm kind of hoping that, I live long enough and some of my sports friends are around long enough to get him, because he's in 9th grade. So he's still got a couple of years to go. But I need to get him involved because, the stuff that he looks at, and it's not sports journalism, and I'm not even sure it's analytics. I mean, I can tell you he could look at game film and break it down. And so
there's definitely a job for that. I mean, in every sport, right? Like they call them grunts, to some degree, or low-level scouts. It's probably, it's how Jim Schwartz became Jim Schwartz and Marvin became. I mean, when I talk to all these people, right? I mean, it's literally there's an industry involved in all of this.
Yeah, and what did they say? They said who was it, AJ Peller, that he he was a Phillies ticket intern, right? Like, so, you got to get in the door. That's his name, right?
Yeah, AJ Preller. Yep.
Yeah. Preller.
Preller.
So, so these guys, you just got to get in the door and kind of show yourself and prove yourself. And so I'm kind of hoping that, that he can do that. But it was great for him to watch. He goes to, we go to about 30 Phillies games a
I was
year.
going to say, by the way, Micah Buchdahl is my guest. He's my longtime friend and one-time Capitals PR guy in the 1980s who's in Philadelphia, not in Philadelphia now on the West Coast, on assignment away from his kid and away from the Phillies while I'm wearing my Padres jersey. So I don't know how this thing's going to go, but I'll say this for you. I invited you to my friend's place in San Francisco because you're out on the West Coast, and I told him a little bit about you. I'm like, this is a guy that for the last 5 years shows up on my Facebook page when it's 28 degrees outside on an April night, and his kid's there watching the Mets play with 4,200 people in a hopeless cause for the Philadelphia Phillies. And the first one's back after plagues, during plagues, like your kid loves the Phillies. So, and I know you sort of either do or have to at this point. Sort of like, I'm not sure that my dad loved the Orioles in 79 or 83, but he loved that I loved them. So he would drag me along, but you really have been there. And much like some Orioles fans that I know, like my buddy Eddie Lauer's there when they're losing 117 games and out there catching the three, he's one of 12 people out there to catch foul balls, right? So he's coming home with a bucket full of balls every night. I'm seeing it on the internet. And I'm thinking, when these teams win, for the people that long suffer for the Padres, like my Aunt Jane, who departed us, who I wear the jersey, and Tony Gwynn, and it's really cool to have what's happening happen, which is why I'm sort of beaming you in, because it looks like y'all are having fun, man. Like the kind of fun we want to have here with the baseball team.
Well, last weekend, we knew we were going to Phillies Braves, excuse me, Friday night and Saturday night, and then we knew we were going to Sunday Night Football for Eagles Dallas. And going into the weekend, I said to someone, I go, anything short of 3-0 is going to just feel bad. And so, but we also know that, those weekends that work out exactly the way you kind of think about or dream about, that's a rarity too, so that's, that's not a given. But I'll share a funny anecdote about, switching affiliations or switching teams. During the summer, we were at Citizens Bank Park. And we're there with my daughter and my nephew Max, who who's in rabbinical school,
former WNST intern who's done well for himself.
Exactly.
Hitting it big.
How many of your interns are going on to rabbinical school? I mean, that probably doesn't happen a whole lot.
Sent the kid out to Ohio. Look how good it turned out, right?
Yeah. So we're sitting there, and I said to my daughter, because she said she had to get a Cardinal shirt, since she's going to St. Louis, and I said, just because you're going to St. Louis for college doesn't mean, like you're still Phillies. Like, and Max goes, that's funny. I remember a guy I know who was from Baltimore. He went to Philadelphia for college, and I'm pretty sure he's a Phillies fan. And I said, hey, you got to understand, number one, I've got my son who he needs to go to games every day and root for a team. And plus the Orioles were so bad for so much of that time that, it was kind of hard to get too excited. And so, I was there for that, for the World Series in, what was it, 93 in Philly. And so I've enjoyed that, but I went, that last time, I guess, was it Orioles Yankees? Was that the last playoff game in Baltimore?
Yeah, there were playoff games here with the Yankees, with the Tigers as well. The Delman Young double.
Yeah,
the Royals. Losing to the Royals was also.
Yeah, so I came to Baltimore for some of those games, and so I still follow the Orioles every day, and I'm kind of hoping that they end up with one day, an ownership change, and they're still in Baltimore.
Look,
right?
Man, your nephew's going to rabbinical school to pray for all of us, right? To fix it all, So, look, for the Phillies and for you guys, I just want to say this. I loved Philadelphia as a kid, right? I loved Rocky. I loved Fake Grass. I loved the Fanatic. I have Phillies hats, Daddy-O hat that I still have, a Richie Ashburn hat that I got at a giveaway in 1981 with my father, my Venezuelan father, who came over and knew Manny Trio, and I have Phillies autographs from Bake McBride, Pete Rose, Tug McGraw, all on Stadium Hilton letterhead. like the little, like, so this is from 1980, 81. So I love the Phillies. And then they wound up playing the Orioles in the World Series. Like a fantasy. I was 15 years old. I only missed game 3 because my high school had a dance that night. That was in like the Palmer pitch, but I went to those games and loving the Phillies, loving baseball. My dad took me to games my 11th year of my life, 1979. I tell the story. I went to 31 straight games before they lost. That was 31-0 before Steve Trout beat them. I remember everything about this. For your kid to have this sort of analytical mind about all this, how many nights a year do you spend in South Philadelphia parking your car, like in that area that I'm familiar with? Springsteen will be there soon. But I haven't come up to a Flyers game, certainly not a Sixers game. I'm trying to think of the last time I was I saw Genesis last year. I went up to the arena for that. So I have been there once since the plague. I saw John Mayer. So like, I've been to Philly a couple of times. As a Baltimorean, now that I live in the county too, it's closer. I would way rather go to Philly for a concert than like the Manassas, and I come up to Camden for concerts. I saw the Black Crowes up there, Pearl Jam, different stuff. For you to make that commitment, because you're down there 80, 100 nights a year. I mean, is that fair to say? As much as any employee would be down there, right?
Yeah, we average, if you include the Leah Center for Temple basketball, we average over 1.5 games a week, like in person, me and him. So we're down there, like most weekends. I mean, I'd say for every Phillies series, every Phillies homestand, we're there at least one of every series. And then we're there for all the the Eagles games. We actually have got Temple football. Temple football is one of the worst football teams in Division I college. As a matter of fact, people probably don't know this, but on the Friday night game of the NLCS, when the Phillies and Padres play game 3, the Temple football is playing Tulsa across the street at the link at the exact same time. Now, that will not cause any additional traffic issues. As a matter of fact,
for the Tulsa football team to get on the bus and get there, right?
I'm guessing. I mean, I honestly think you're going to be talking maybe 100, maybe 200 people that are going to be in a 70,000 person link for that game. So I feel bad for them, but I buy season tickets for them out of out of loyalty to my alma mater, not because there's any reason to buy season tickets for Temple football. But I'm optimistic for Temple basketball. They're supposed to be pretty good this year, and so we're looking forward to the college hoop season 2, and then we're going to Chicago for Eagles Bears in December, and hopefully get some playoff games to go to as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, we haven't gotten to the undefeated bye week Eagles, and I mean Josh Allen's on bye week. He's out wearing a Padre jersey in San Diego. I mean, it made me like say to my wife, like, should we have flown out to San Diego for a couple of these games, or like thinking about this, or go up to Philly? Freddie Ullman, the assistant general manager, has been my lifer friend for 30 years with the Padres. So I've been texting him old pictures of me and Kevin Towers and Tony Gwynn together back in the day. And I've obviously busted out my my Tony Gwynn. This is, there's not, you can't hate on this jersey, right? I mean, this week you can because you're a Phillies fan, but there's something about seeing the goodness of these communities kind of come together where, I mean, I was there in 98 when Tony Gwynn hit the home run at Yankee Stadium. I was out in San Diego when Trevor Hoffman came in for Hell's Bells and all that. I like to see these resurrection stories, and I really do put it into focus for Baltimore and say, what's it going to look like this decade if we get a couple of playoff games one of these Octobers, and it's exciting and it's fun for you and your kid.
Yeah, and if you saw, like, I mean, that pent up energy in Philadelphia last week for the first playoff game in 11 years, if you had told me that night, when Roy Halladay, lost in that game 5 against the Cardinals, if you told me like the next home playoff game is in 11 years, I would have been like, yeah, right. Like, you got to be kidding me. But it was 11 years. And so, so it was cool for Ben because he's been to hundreds of MLB games. And that was his first postseason game last week. And we were walking to the stadium.
Oh, that's right. He's never, because I think we've all been alive forever. It feels like 5 freaking minutes ago we were watching the Phillies win the World Series, like literally.
Right. So he was born. I mean, he was a couple months old when the Phillies won the World Series, but, and he was still an infant when they were in the playoffs. So, He started going to games probably regularly at probably 4 or 5. But when we're walking down, I said, I hope this experience tonight is as great as my first playoff game, because I remember my first playoff game ever. It was the Lowenstein walk-off in the 10th. And
my dad took me to the Palmer Catfish game in '74. So I still have the scorecard from that day. So it didn't end up well for the Orioles, obviously. But '79 was magic, though. I remember Lamar Hoyt in '83 and seeing the Angels come in '79 with all of our players.
So it was, so luckily he had a good night too. Excuse me. And
well, he did, right? I mean, like legendary.
Yeah, so it was great. It was a great experience. I'm hoping next week he gets to go to a World Series game. I promised him he would if it comes to be, and and we'll see what happens. So but Philadelphia, it's great. I think I saw one of my favorite tweets the other day was it said, arrogant Philly is my favorite Philly. After this great sports weekend, everybody's winning, and it really is. It is kind of cool, and it is contagious. Now, here's another really interesting thing. I think Baltimore's worse than Philly when it comes to homicides. I mean, they're probably pretty close, but they're bad, right? Like really horrible record numbers of homicides. And so Phillies again unfortunately that's another record they're going to break for the umpteenth time. And it's really the city's.
We're all trying to fix our. I mean, that's why I've moved my brand, because it's so important.
The city's dangerous, right? Like it's very dangerous. But I read the other day, like they somehow went 4 consecutive days without a homicide, coinciding with these Phillies and Eagles games. And I'll tell you what, I mean, it's kind of hard to say that there's no coincidence there between these everybody being excited and happy and winning on these consecutive nights and nobody going out and killing anybody. But that happened. That's a statistical reality of the last week. And so it's kind of, when I read that, I thought it was amazing. Like that it translated to the Phillies and Eagles winning translated to saving lives. That's how sort of excited the town gets. And and we all know that these winning streaks, that they don't last forever. And if the Phillies advance, that'll be great. And if they don't, it was still a lot of fun. Watching that, the race to the end and getting into the postseason.
I think the reason I even wrote to you was you sleep when it's over with. Whenever the run's over, you'll get some sleep. And this Eagles run, there's another run. Even if this run ends with my Padres around here, Micah Buchdahl has been my friend for almost 40 years. And as I said to my wife, and I'll bid you adieu with this because you have a meeting, is when the Phillies were jumping up and down, first thing I tweeted, grease the poles. That's the first thing I did last week. And the second thing I said to my wife, I'm like, damn if I don't want a pretzel right now, like I just want to get in the car and I want it to squish and I want it to stick to the top roof of my mouth. So there's a chance I might be at Game 4 this weekend. At least I'm thinking it through if they lower the price of the tickets. And if you need somebody to take your kid, me and your kid in South Philly, oh my, Micah, be well, fly safe, all right?
All right, thanks, Dustin.
St. Louis, Ted Drew's frozen custard. Write that down. Ted Drew's frozen custard.
We always go there.
Yeah, you get it right in the airport in the little machine the minute you land, all right? Swipe, pull, plastic fork. All right, there he goes. Micah Buchdahl joining us here from the West Coast of the East Coast, from Northwest Baltimore, now somewhere in Philadelphia, trapped between Eagles' greatness and Phillies' possibilities. I am Nestor. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. We never stop talking Baltimore positive, and a little bit of Philadelphia sports making me hungry for a cheesesteak.